what do we have here? This is the Manley Massive Passive Stereo EQ. Now, I've been gassing over this for countless years. I can't remember how many years I've been looking to get one of these, and I finally got my hands on one at the end of last year. Now, it's become a valued part of my workflow, and most people think of this as a master bus EQ. Yes, it can be used as that, and it can be used to that great effect, but I use this in a tracking scenario where I'll run drum machines, synthesizers, and my Eurorack modular through it and completely transform the sound. And when I was looking into getting one of these over the years, there just wasn't enough electronic music examples of this, so I've decided to do this video. And if you're interested in one of these, maybe this will make you bite the bullet, but don't blame me if you do. So if you don't know much about this EQ, all you need to know is there's a bunch of tubes and transformers and all manner of electrical goodness in there that is going to impart a lot of color onto your signal. So without further ado, let's grab some crayons and add some color. So first of all, I'm going to just run quickly through the front panel controls here. And if you've used the software version of this stereo EQ, it will look very familiar. We have controls for the left side and the right side of the stereo EQ. And each side has 4 different bands that we can affect the signal with. The top control here is a switch for boost, out and cut. So whether we're going to boost the signal in that band, bypass that band, or cut. And then we set the amount of the boost or the cut with this control. And then we have the bandwidth. So this is creating like the Q factor, which is a shelf, a bell, a narrow bell, and a special one we'll come on to later. And the last pot here is a dented frequency selector. So we can adjust that frequency and boost or cut at that level. And in the center here, we have gain, positive and negative, and 2 lovely high pass and low pass set fixed filters. It's actually quite an interesting read, the manual, where you can see some of these curves that the different bands and the bandwidths are going to give you, and also the steepness of these low pass and high pass filters. But let's use our ears. Let's run some loops and signals through this, and you can hear it in action. And as I move through the controls, just have a listen for these little sweet spots. I mean, there's nothing that sounds bad, really. It's all down to personal taste, how much you want to push, how much you want to cut. But let's get into it and let's see what we can do. So the first signal that I'm going to run through here is a loop from our Moog Sub 37 preset library. It's like a modular inspired loop. Let's just run it through there and start pushing some of these bands and see what we can get out of it. For this Moog Sub 37 bass loop, I've set the controls completely flat, and we will slowly introduce each band, pushing or reducing, and yeah, let's see what this thing can do on some bass. As you can hear, it really can bring out that detail. Maybe a little too much when I was pushing that low band in the bottom end there, but it definitely adds some extra character and bite to the signal, which those lovely tubes are imparting their character. So let's move on to the next example. Now I'm going to showcase pretty much a full mix through the Massive Passive. It's a drum loop, a bass line, an arpeggiated loop, and an extra top loop. And what we're going to do is going to increase some of the low end, bring out some of the detail and the texture in the top end, and maybe cut around 270, 390, just to alleviate any of that mud. I'll run it dry, then I'll punch it in, and we'll engage the bands and hear the difference. And as you can hear, it brings out some of that detail and the texture in the top end. The synth line cuts through a little bit more. The bass is a bit more controlled, a little bit thicker, but also cutting out some of that mud that's happening around 270. So yeah, I think that's a vast improvement on what we had before. Here we are with another full mix, and we're going to run very similar settings to the previous example. Probably not going to need as much boost on the shelf because there's already quite a present top end to it. But let's see what we can do just by moving a few controls either way. Right, the next signal to get the treatment from the Manley Massive Passive is a drum loop from our Agenda sample library. So let's run it through, switch it on, and adjust some of the bands and see what results we can get. Okay, we're going to up the tempo now, and this drum loop is 137 BPM. It's a bit more of a banging techno vibe, and we're going to run it through the Manley Massive Passive. And two areas to listen for: this high shelf here, we're going to bring out the detail in the hi-hats and the top end, and add a little bit of thickness with this 100 to 220 hertz bell boost in the low end. So yeah, there is something really nice about tubes and the top end. Everyone talks about the low end of tubes, like the Poltec thing, but the Manley, that 3 and the 3K and above, the shelf, it has some special dust up there, which I'm not going to polish off anytime soon. So let's move on to another example, and quite possibly the last example of this video. Okay, I skipped over earlier, but now let's talk about this special bandwidth control that we have here on the right hand side. So when you are in shelf mode for that particular band, this mode counter fully clockwise will give you a dip and a boost at that frequency. And if you're in counterclockwise mode, it will just give you a regular shelf. Now, I do recommend downloading the manual for the EQ off their website. So this will give you a visual representation of what this is actually doing. And you can see this is in the low band, but you can see what's happening is as you boost the shelf, and if you're in fully clockwise mode, you will get this dip at that frequency point. Now, it's all well and good seeing it, but let's run some sounds through it and hear it in action. For this example, I will run a Moog Labyrinth loop through here, and we'll just engage those shelves on the top and the bottom, and then dig in and see how massively it can transform the loop that goes into it. So let's give it a go. So that's one of my favorite ways to use the EQ. It's sculpting it in a way that it's imparting as much color and character into the signal as I possibly can, and transforming it into something completely new and unexpected. Yep, I love that, and I'm here all week for that kind of thing.